Insane secret revealed. Millionaire witnesses Maid defending wheelchair girl at midnight. The clock struck 12, silencing the bustling streets of Maplewood. Shadows danced in the moonlight, but one flickered with purpose. A lone figure stood outside a grand mansion, heart pounding like a war drum. The maid, dressed neatly in a crisp uniform, was locked in an intense standoff with a group of men. Each carried the weight of privilege, their suits glistening like dark omens under the faint streetlight. And there, among them, was a girl in a wheelchair, her eyes wide and terrified. Who was this girl? Why were the millionaire witnesses so invested? The maid's face was a mix of determination and fear, a storm brewing beneath the surface. It felt like time had fractured, stretching out, each second thick with tension as the men circled closer. Murmurs drifted through the night. She can't be serious. This could ruin us. The atmosphere crackled like electricity, danger palpable in the cool air. Could anyone inside the mansion hear them? Their dramatic confrontation felt like an epic standoff from a movie. The ambiguity of the situation hung heavy. The girl, a vulnerable target or a hiding secret? And the maid, why risk everything to defend her? Just then, one of the men shouted, a taunting sneer on his face. Let us see how loyal you really are. The air grew thick with tension, a slow suffocation, constricting like a noose. The maid's hands trembled, but her voice rang clear, a beacon cutting through the darkness. I want to let you touch her. Before we continue, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The silence that followed was deafening. All eyes turned to the maid. She stood defiant against the crushing weight of wealth and power. A flicker of hope glinted in the girl's eyes, a tiny spark amongst the menacing shadows. What lay beneath their polished exteriors? Were secrets buried deep, waiting to be unmasked? Just then, a sudden crash erupted from within the mansion, a sound that could shatter the already fragile tension as everyone turned to the source of chaos. What were they hiding? Would the truth tear them apart, or would they fall deeper into darkness? The sound echoed, a shattering crash, slicing through the still night like a blade. The men swung their gazes toward the mansion, panic flickering across their faces. They hadn't expected this disturbance. The girl in the wheelchair took a shaky breath, her wide eyes darting between the maid and the imposing figures surrounding her. What was that? One of the men hissed, his bravado dissipating like fog under the sun. The maid's heart raced, her instincts screaming for her to act. We need to get out of here, she urged the girl, her voice low yet urgent. The group of men hesitated, their unity straining. This wasn't just a standoff anymore. A dread realization began to seep in. The girl's voice trembled. What if they find out the truth? Even in her situation, locked in a battle of wills, she was still thinking ahead. But what truth? The maid felt her chest tighten, knowing there was more at stake than they realized. Suddenly, the massive front doors of the mansion burst open, revealing a figure emerging from the darkness, tall, thin, and cloaked in shadow. As the moonlight illuminated his face, a collective gasp echoed from the men. It was Mr. Basford, the billionaire owner of the estate. Stop this madness, he thundered, his voice booming like thunder, mixing with the distant rumble of impending storm clouds. The tension in the air thickened, palpable and heavy, as he strode forward, eyes blazing with authority. What are you doing here? One of the men stammered, guilt flickering in his gaze. I know everything, Mr. Basford snapped, and the words sent a jolt of shock through the group. It's time you realize that your connections won't save you from what is to come. The maid exchanged a glance with the girl, confusion swirling. Was this a threat? Or an opportunity? Mr. Basford turned, addressing the maid directly. You need to back off and let me handle this. No, she protested, adrenaline coursing through her veins. You don't understand. They're after her, and I want to let them in that moment. The girl leaned forward, her voice cracking. Please don't. I can't go back to them. They'll hurt me. Her words seemed to freeze time. The men shifted uncomfortably, unease creeping into their smugness. What lay beneath their desire to assert control? A glimmer of vulnerability began to unravel their bravado. Basford slowly sank into silence, a deep frown creasing his brow. "You don't know what you're dealing with," he said, each word slow and deliberate. "But I'm not going to let them use you." The maid's resolve solidified. This was no longer just about her duty. The true danger was now laid bare beyond the money, and the power of the men stood a greater threat, something more insidious lurking in the shadows. Then, without warning, another sound erupted from the mansion, this time a distant scream, echoing down the halls like a warning bell. The men flinched, their eyes wide with fear, a rare glimpse of humanity cracking their polished facades. "What was that?" one of them yelled. Panic rising. As chaos ensued. The maid felt the air become charged, electricity crackling between them all. They were racing toward an unseen truth. But which direction would they all take? Basford looked toward the maid and the girl, his expression turning grave. "We need to go now? There's no time to waste." The girl's gaze darted between them. "But what if this isn't over? What if she'll—" The maid placed a finger to her lips, urgency flooding her thoughts. "We'll figure it out together." As they turned away from the men, the new dilemma hung heavy in the air. Who among them could be trusted, and what lay hidden in the mansion's depths? The night was far from over, and more secrets were waiting to be uncovered. With Mr. Basford leading the way, the maid gripped the handles of the wheelchair tightly, her pulse racing. The distant screams still echoed in her mind, mingling with the mounting tension around them. The girl's eyes were wide, reflecting both fear and a flicker of hope. "What if they find us?" she whispered, trying to stifle her quivering voice. "They won't," Basford assured, glancing back at the men who stood frozen, a mix of anger and fear etching their features. "But we need to move quickly. They've gotten too far already." As they made their way down the broad staircase, the air was thick with the scent of polished wood and something darker, a damp mold creeping in from the corners. The ominous atmosphere pressed down like a heavy weight, and each creak of the floor beneath their feet felt like a call to attention. "Where do we go?" the maid asked, urgency coloring her speech. Basford hesitated, the flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. "The basement. There are more secrets down there, and you need to know the truth." A chill ran through the maid. Secrets could mean danger. But what about the men? What if they follow? "They're not thinking clearly right now. Let us just keep moving," he replied, the barely contained frustration evident in his voice. As they reached the bottom of the staircase, a flickering light greeted them, casting eerie shadows on the stone walls. The air was cool, and a musty smell clung to everything. Basford led them deeper into the dimly lit corridor, and the maid couldn't shake the feeling that they were wandering into a trap. "What kind of secrets are down here?" she probed, stealing quick glances at the girl, who was visibly trembling. Basford paused, turning to face them. "The truth about why they're after her. More than you can imagine." His eyes darted past them, and the maid felt her heart race even faster. Something was coming. Before she could inquire further, the sound of thunder rolled through the mansion, jolting them. The basement door slammed shut, rattling the hinges ominously. Panic surged as the girl gasped, and the maid spun around, eyes wide. "Basford!" she shouted. His expression hardened, fear replaced by determination. "We have to hold fast. They've sealed us in, but they can't control everything that's here." He reached for a rusty old handle, turning it slowly. "We might be trapped, but we aren't defenseless." Suddenly, from the corner of the basement, hushed voices seeped in. The men were coming, their muffled threats mingling with the storm outside. The dread sank deep into the maid's gut. "We need to hide," she whispered urgently, guiding the wheelchair toward a shadowy corner. Just as they settled into the dark alcove, the basement erupted in chaos. The men burst through the door, stepping cautiously. "Find them," one of them barked, the edge of panic in his tone. "They can't have gone far." The girl clutched the maid's arm, a silent plea in her grip. The maid squeezed back, refusing to let fear tear them apart. This was a fight for survival. "What do we do?" The girl trembled. Basford's eyes narrowed, staring straight at the approaching figures. "We wait. They're too focused. They won't see us." But as the men inched closer, the girl's breathing quickened, a sharp gasp shattered the quiet. Just above a whisper, she murmured, "I don't think I can take this," and then, out of nowhere, a chilling laugh echoed through the basement, slicing through their fear. The maid's blood ran cold as a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman, just as cloaked in darkness as the storm outside, her smile unsettling in its familiarity. "I see you've awakened the beast, Mr. Basford," she taunted, her voice a silky thread weaving through the tension. With that reveal, the night stretched on, darker than they could ever expect. Who was this woman? And how did she fit into this twisted truth? The girl tightened her grip, dread soaring through the air thick as fog. They were not just facing the men. A deeper betrayal had just slithered into their midst. The laughter lingered in the air like a bitter aftertaste, hanging heavy as the shadows flickered in the dim light. The maid squeezed the girl's hand tighter, a desperate attempt to keep her anchored in reality, to stave off the rising tide of panic. "Who are you?" Basford demanded, his voice betraying none of the fear that gnawed at his insides. The woman stepped forward, her faint silhouette taking shape under the weak light. A veil of hair framed her face, and for a moment, the maid thought she recognized that smile, sharp and knowing. "Ah, Mr. Basford," she purred with a sultry drawl, "you really don't remember me? How disappointing." "They've been looking for you," Basford replied, his tone unwavering but the thread of uncertainty behind it palpable. "You bring nothing but trouble." "Trouble?" She laughed again, and it echoed off the cold stone walls like a taunt. "Oh, but you misunderstand. I'm the only one who can unlock the truth behind everything you've been afraid of." Her eyes glittered with a dark intensity. The girl fidgeted in her wheelchair, her composure cracking under the pressure. "What do you know about me?" she asked, her voice frail but determined. The woman's gaze fixed on the girl, and something flickered. "Recognition, maybe? Your father. He is not who you think he is." The revelation should have been a tranquil whisper, but it crashed into the basement like a wave. A strangled sound escaped the maid's throat. "What are you saying?" "Let us just say," the woman continued, her voice oozing with satisfaction, "that not everything that glitters is gold. Your life is a carefully woven tapestry of lies." Basford stepped between the girl and the woman, an instinctual move. "You're lying. What do you gain from this?" "Maybe just a front-row seat to the chaos," she smirked, glancing toward the dark expanse beyond the alcove. "Besides, once the truth comes out, you'll all wish you'd kept quiet." Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor, growing louder and more frantic. The men had regrouped, their anger and frustration morphing into concrete rage. Thumbs pressed against triggers, they had lost their patience. "Hide," Basford hissed, but there was nowhere for them to go. The basement felt like a cage, trapping them in the web of deceit and looming violence. "Do we fight?" The girl's voice quivered, a stark contrast to the upheaval outside. "Not yet," Basford said through clenched teeth. "We have to find a way out of here first." "What about her?" The maid snapped, fear and anger mingling in her heart. "She knows something." The woman tilted her head, considering the threat of exposure. "I could help you if you think a makeshift alliance with me will save you." "Trusting you is dangerous," Basford shot back, and uncertainty flared in his expressions. "But," his voice drifted, contemplating the risk. Before he could finalize the thought, the walls vibrated as the men reached the bottom stair. "They're down here," one shouted, adrenaline fueling his desperation. "What do we do?" The girl trembled, looking from Basford to the maid, and then back to the woman. The sinister smile returned to the woman's face, a glint of mischief dancing in her eyes. "Now, this is where the real game begins. I suggest you follow my lead, and we may just survive to uncover the truth. Or dive deeper into the darkness," the maid muttered under her breath, leaving a knot tightening in her stomach. As the footsteps thundered closer, a realization gripped them. Escape was not only about dodging bullets. It was about untangling the intricate web of betrayal woven tightly around them and deciding who to trust. The basement door shuddered ominously, their fate hanging by a thread. Would they unravel the truth or become prey in this spiraling nightmare? Blackness enveloped them as the door burst open and chaos poured in. Their only choice would come at a devastating cost. The door slammed open, and in rushed a group of men, faces hard and eyes wild, the flickering light casting monstrous shadows on the walls. "Search everywhere," one bellowed, brandishing his weapon, the smooth metal glinting ominously in the dimness. They were hunting, and the scent of fear hung thick in the air. Basford's heart raced. He glanced at the girl, her eyes wide with terror. The maid, barely breathing, stayed stiff with anxiety, unwilling to show weakness. The mysterious woman, with her sly grin, stepped back, making herself small in the shadows, almost blending with them. Now's not the time to play games, Basford grunted under his breath, a quick shift in his demeanor. He would protect them, no matter the cost, but the truth of their surroundings tightened around him like a noose. The girl whispered, "What do we do?" Her voice barely carried above the chaos, the panic rising within her like a tidal wave. That a jagged breath escaped the woman's lips, her expression shifting from playful to predatory. "We wait and watch." She pointed toward a narrow access to the left, behind old crates and discarded furniture. "That way. While they're busy, we can slip out." "Are you insane?" Basford hissed, glaring at her. "You want us to sneak past them? Unless you have a better plan, darling," she cooed, the glitter in her eyes promising trouble. Basford clenched his fists. One part of him wanted to shove her back into the dark and protect the girl and the maid. The other part was desperate to escape this nightmare. "Follow my lead," the woman insisted, swaying slightly as if to assure them of the choice. "Trust me, for now." A shout from outside pierced their fragile calculation. "Over here." I heard them. In that moment, Basford made a decision. "This is it," he whispered vehemently, gesturing for the girl and Maid to gather close. "We move." They rushed toward the narrow access. The woman led, her presence both alluring and sinister, while Basford held the girl tight, guiding her wheelchair swiftly through the gloom. Their breaths were shallow, their movements frantic, each second ticking like a clock counting down to catastrophe. The girl's eyes shone bright with fear, her thoughts ticking over ancient secrets and painful uncertainties. Just as they reached the threshold into the other room, one of the men collided with them, barreling out from the shadows, rage on his face. "Stop!" The command sliced through the air. Basford's instincts kicked in. He shoved the girl's wheelchair just ahead into the passage and lunged forward, fists flying. A punch landed solidly, sending the attacker staggering back. "Go, now," he shouted, breathless. The maid pushed the girl's chair with all her strength, the wheels squeaking in protest. The woman hesitated at the doorway, a fleeting moment where something shifted in her gaze. Was it remorse, or was she relishing the chaos? Then she leaped into the fray, the darkness swirling around her like a dancer cloaked in smoke. They swerved into an unexpected hallway. Dim bulbs flickered overhead, casting strange shadows. A sense of urgency shot through Basford. "What now? Where do we go?" The woman twirled gracefully past them, leading the charge further down the hall. "This way. We can lose them in the cellar." But the girl's anxiety bubbled over. "What's in the cellar?" she cried, the tension bleeding into every word. "To find your truth, love," the woman replied, her voice silk and danger. "And perhaps lead us out of this alive." The footsteps echoed behind them, relentless. Could they really escape? Or was the cellar the final trap in a wicked game they hadn't even begun to understand? With dread curling in his gut, Basford pushed forward, knowing each choice would shape their fate. Would they discover the secrets buried in the shadows? Or was it all designed to pull them into the abyss? Wonders daily built in his mind, chaotic thoughts racing. The truth had teeth, and it was hungry. The door to the cellar swung open, a gaping maw into the unknown. The door creaked ominously as it swung wide, revealing a staircase leading downward into darkness, the air thick with the scent of damp stone and forgotten memories. Basford took a deep breath, heart hammering in his chest. Behind them, the shouts of the men grew closer, jagged and harsh, like the breaking waves of a storm. "Go, go," Basford urged, forcing the girl's wheelchair into the shadowy passage. The maid rushed ahead, her hands trembling but resolute as she maneuvered the chair into the unknown. The woman followed, a haunting smile on her lips, as if relishing the thrill of danger. The descent was steep, each step echoing in the void around them, amplifying the fear swirling in Basford's gut. He glanced over his shoulder just as the first of the men rounded the corner, their torches casting savage beams of light that cut through the thick darkness. "This way." He shouted to the others, lurching forward as they stumbled into the cellar. Gritty stone walls closed in around them, and Basford fumbled to find a light switch, fingers quivering. At last, a flicker, and the dim overhead bulbs sputtered to life, revealing a cluttered room littered with crates, rusty tools, and shadows that seemed to dance at the corners of his vision. "Where do we hide?" The girl whimpered, her voice trembling, eyes wide with terror. "Back there," the woman said, pointing to a stack of crates. Her expression morphed from gleeful savagery to an intense focus. Basford felt time slow as they pressed into the alcove, the three of them squeezed tightly behind the boxes, hearts pounding together in a frantic rhythm. He could hear shuffling from above, a low rumble of voices intermingling with the scuff of feet. They were getting closer. "Is this really necessary?" the maid asked, her voice barely above a whisper, eyes darting nervously. The woman leaned in, voice silky yet sharp. "Trust me, sweetie. If you want to see the sun again, we must let them get comfortable up there. They won't look down here, at least not yet." The girl's fingers trembled in her lap, a stark contrast to the fierce determination in Basford's clenched fists. He was all too aware that the success of their escape rested heavily upon the woman's enigmatic charm and deeper motivations. What truth was she hiding? Suddenly, heavy footsteps resounded from above, making Basford's skin crawl. The men's voices grew clearer, the anger glowing brighter. "They're here somewhere, I swear. Check everywhere." They couldn't have gone far. Basford bit down on his lip, forcing himself to breathe steadily. The air felt heavy and electric. Every ragged sound, every quickened breath seemed magnified. His mind raced. What is in this cellar? What are we searching for? He thought, an urgent gnawing in his gut as he focused on the woman, trying to catch her eye. She regarded him carefully, a glimmer of something indecipherable flickering in her gaze. "Secrets," she whispered in return, as if hearing his silent question. "The ones hidden in the darkness. But not just there's your truth, Basford. It's down here waiting. It's not just about surviving now, it's about revelations." A crash echoed through the cellar, splintering their fragile focus, as one of the men stumbled through the door, stepping just inches away from their hiding place. Basford held his breath, feeling the knot of fear and urgency tightening in his chest. Would they be discovered? Would the truth they sought set them free, or would it become their undoing? As the man leaned closer, Basford realized time was slipping away into the abyss. The woman's voice slid into his ear like velvet. "Remember, truth is a dangerous game. Are you ready to play?" With every second that passed, Basford felt he was teetering on the precipice of discovery. The choice lay before him, dangling like the light from the flickering bulb above. They could either bury the truth in the shadows or let it burn bright, consuming them all. And just when he thought they might slip through unnoticed, a sudden noise echoed from deep within the cellar. A voice they never intended to hear. "Who is down there?" Basford's heart dropped. The voice echoed ominously again, slicing through the thick tension. Basford's heart raced as he strained to listen, half expecting the men to storm in. Silence filled the room, palpable and suffocating. "Stay quiet," he hissed through clenched teeth, eyes darting toward the woman and the girl. The maid's hand trembled against the wheel of the chair, but her expression hardened, determination sparkling beneath her fear. The man above shifted, his silhouette blocking the light. Basford could barely make out his grim face, twisted in fervor. "I know you're down there. You want to escape this time." Basford could sense the mounting desperation, the way the air thickened with the man's fury. Had they truly underestimated the resolve of their pursuers? The woman's whisper brushed against his ear again, warm and chilling. "They hunt for something they believe is theirs. But it's bigger than that, much bigger." "What's bigger?" Basford murmured, not daring to take his eyes off the man above. "The truth hidden in these walls. What they think they desire is the last thing they want," she replied, her gaze steady yet distant, as though she saw far beyond the stacks of crates. A frantic set of footsteps thundered across the floor above their heads, a looming threat that the cellar's old beams couldn't shield them from. "Check over there. They have to be nearby." A voice boomed. Another crash resounded, the sound of something heavy shifting. Basford felt his breath catch in his throat, his pulse pounding fiercely as cold sweat slicked his palms. The girl let out a soft whimper, which Basford quickly shushed. "Listen to her," the woman snapped. Her eyes blazed with a frightening intensity. Control your fear. We need to play this right. The entire cellar felt like a cage, each creak of wood above a reminder of the hunters above them. Basford grasped the edge of the crate, trying to channel the rising panic into something useful. What do we do? He whispered, desperation creeping into his voice, as if sensing his torment. The woman leaned closer, close enough for him to feel her breath, sweet with a hint of something strange. Patience. When they search, they'll find more than they bargained for. And once they do, everything will change. Before Basford could respond, a loud crash sent a jolt through them all, the sound reverberating with the threat of their discovery. The man had found something, a broken crate, perhaps? The desperate voices of the others echoed as they joined him, their shouts filling the air with chaotic dread. There's something down there. Keep looking. Another barked. The woman glanced at Basford. Her expression shifted from fierce to contemplative. What is more dangerous than the hunters, Basford? Sometimes the very things we run from can lead us to the truth we desperately seek. What are you saying? Basford hissed, shaking his head as another crash reverberated through the cellar. He wanted to scream. The pressure was suffocating. What if I told you the truth we uncover could change everything? Her eyes locked onto his, charged with a force that made his skin tingle. What if the real danger is ignorance? Basford opened his mouth, ready to retort, but the booming voices from above cut him off. An urgency tightened his throat, swallowing down the dread that bubbled right beneath the surface. Check the cellar door. One of the men shouted, voice growing dangerously close. The woman's expression cooled with a dangerous calm. It's time. Are you ready to face what lies in the dark? Basford swallowed hard, his heart pounding louder than the sound of their pursuers. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, secrets screaming to be set free. Would facing them bring about his salvation or damnation? An electric thrill swept through him at the thought of the truth lying in wait. With a fierce nod, Basford held his ground. Whatever was about to unfold would change their fates irrevocably. The door creaked ominously, and he braced himself against the crates, anticipating what might come next. But as the man approached, a pivotal phrase echoed through the shadows, freezing the blood in his veins. Don't you all remember what happened last time someone tried to hide? It was then they knew. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were about to confront a ghost from the past. What truth would be unleashed next? The heavy door swung open, and harsh light flooded into the cellar, turning shadows into puddles of treacherous clarity. Basford squinted against the brightness, heart racing as he prepared for the confrontation that loomed over them like a thundercloud. The figure above loomed, silhouetted by the blinding light. His face was now unmistakable, twisted by malevolence. Ah, the little mice are hiding, just as expected, he sneered, scanning the cramped space. The sound of shuffling footsteps grew closer, threading through the air with each passing second, a cacophony of dread. Basford's eyes darted to the woman, whose expression had transformed into one of steely resolve. We need to show them, she murmured, low enough that only he could hear. What we hold here is our only weapon. What do you mean? Basford glanced back, the urgency thickening as the hunter's footsteps faded momentarily, but then surged forward once again. Trust me. When I say the truth is a sharper blade than any knife in their hands, I mean it. Her voice was cold, yet it stirred something deep within him, a flicker of hope amidst the chaos. The girl glanced up at Basford, eyes wide and glistening with unshed tears. It pained him to see her so afraid. What is down here? She asked, her voice a fragile whisper, vibrating with anxiety. Before Basford could respond, the man with the malicious grin leaned further down into the cellar, his shadow looming over them like an executing angel. It's time to face your reckoning, he shouted, and the other men began to file in. The light outside of the cellar threatened to drown them in its radiance, and soon, they would be trapped in the exposed space. Now, the woman urged, eyes blazing with fervor as she reached for a dusty crate beside her. She yanked it open, and a cascade of old papers spilled out, documents, letters, photographs of faces long gone, tangled in past betrayals and twisted histories. Basford felt his breath hitch. There was something here, something that went deeper than any of them understood. What are those? He asked, voice barely above a whisper, hoping for clarity. The hidden past, she replied, determination infused with urgency. These tell the story they buried. The figures above recoiled, disbelief spreading across their faces. They hadn't expected a fight, nor had they prepared for truths long kept at bay. "You're playing with fire," the man sneered, but the confidence in his voice wavered. "The past is best left buried." "No," the woman cried, voice cutting through the thick air like a blade. "It's time you learned every secret you thought was safe has a way of coming back. Don't you see? The truth will shatter the silence you've built." With that, she scooped up a frayed photograph. A distant familiarity washed over Basford as he leaned closer. There, amongst the faces of the long-forgotten, a striking likeness stared back, one Basford recognized, but thought lost to memory, lost to the darkness. The girl grasped Basford's hand, squeezing tightly, panic washing over her face. "What does it mean? Are we in danger?" "Every truth revealed is a scandal waiting to explode," whispered the woman, locking eyes with Basford. "But we must decide now. Will we face it, or let it consume us?" The tension crackled and hissed, punctuated by the heavy thud of boots returning to life. Charging through the narrow staircase towards them, the hunters more determined, more feral. As the soldiers of fate closed in on them, Basford's heart thundered. Would he be brave enough to embrace the past, or would it ensnare them all in a web of despair? With a final glance at the photograph, a revelation struck him like lightning. He raised his voice above the growing clamor. "What if these secrets are the key to finding a way out? Then let us unlock the door to our freedom," she shouted, rallying the girl and pushing forward as the entrance loomed perilously near. As the hunters breached the threshold, the cellar filled with shouts and shadows, and all Basford could do was plunge forward into the unknown. Secrets clashed violently with the terrors they had faced, but the echoes of the past pulsed around them. It was now or never. And as they stepped into a world fraught with danger, Basford wondered anxiously. Was this the beginning of their liberation or the final chapter of a tragic tale? What haunting truth lay waiting just beyond the door? The moment they burst through the cellar door, chaos erupted. Bright light flooded their senses, and the shadows from the narrow staircase danced around them. Basford ducked reflexively, his instincts urging him to seek cover, yet there was no time for hesitation. The women behind him clung tightly, their fear palpable as they charged into the uncertain world above. "Keep moving," the woman commanded, her voice firm as she pulled Basford forward. The ugliness of the confrontation loomed ahead, but she displayed an unwavering determination that buoyed his own resolve. The girl followed closely, her small hand trembling. Basford could feel the weight of desperation in the air, an invisible force pressing down on them all. Menacing voices echoed, rebounding off the stone walls as the hunters descended upon them. "Stop!" one of them shouted, the thud of heavy boots echoing ominously behind them. Each syllable struck Basford's chest like a lead weight, pushing him to run faster. Adrenaline surged through him. He could sense the urgency, the dire need to escape the peril that closed in from all sides. As they reached the top of the stairs, a sharp, metallic clang drew their attention. Basford turned just in time to see one of the hunters swing a crowbar down with wild fury. It sailed through the air dangerously close, barely missing the woman as she ducked. The sound of it hitting the wall reverberated like a gunshot in the stillness. Panic rushed through Basford. Was this how it would end? Over there. The woman pointed, her eyes scanning for an avenue of escape. A heavy door stood ajar at the far end of the dimly lit corridor, a possible route, but they had to reach it first. Basford nodded his understanding. He needed to seize that moment. "Run!" he yelled, urging them onward. The trio rushed forward, propelled by fear and a hope that flickered like a candle in the gathering storm. The air felt thick with anticipation, and every heartbeat seemed to echo the sentiment that failure was not an option. Another scream erupted behind them as a hunter stumbled. Basford didn't dare look back. They were too close to turning this nightmare around. As they neared the door, he could hear the raspy breaths of the girl beside him, a mixture of fear and determination that spurred him on even faster. "Get the door," he shouted to the woman, pushing her ahead. She reached for the handle, her fingers trembling as they fumbled with the old mechanism that seemed to have been closed for ages. The girl pressed against Basford, her small body trembling with the weight of their flight. Come on," he urged, the pounding footsteps of the hunters echoing ominously in the distance. With a final yank, the door creaked open, revealing an expanse of blackness beyond. They hesitated for but a heartbeat, the shadows beyond promising both safety and uncertainty. But the frenetic sounds of pursuit left no room for debate. "Go!" the woman yelled, shoving Basford and the girl through the threshold. They stumbled into the unknown, falling onto rough ground, the air alive with the sounds of chirping crickets and rustling leaves. The sweet scent of damp earth filled his lungs, but there was no time to savor it. They scrambled to their feet, adrenaline still coursing through them. A faint path guided them into the forest's darkness, a sanctuary from the chaos behind. As they ran deeper into the thicket, Basford stole a glance behind them, heart pounding. The door's frame was now just a distant memory, the sounds of their pursuers muffled by trees and thick underbrush. "Are we safe?" the girl gasped, her breath coming in rapid bursts. "For now," Basford replied, his voice tight with tension. Deep inside, he knew that safety was merely an illusion. They had escaped from the men of the past, but what awaited them in the future loomed like a fog that threatened to swallow them whole. As they pressed on, the woman's voice echoed in his mind. Those secrets, the burden they carried, were only just beginning to unfurl. What horrors awaited them? Just as doubt threatened to seep into his resolve, the woman stopped abruptly, her expression darkening. "I think we're not alone out here." Basford felt a chill crawl down his spine. What would they face next in the abyss of the night? Darkness concealed more than just danger. It whispered secrets that could shatter everything he thought he understood. The night pressed in around them, a velvet embrace of foreboding shadows. Basford's instincts screamed. An unshakable unease settled like ice in his chest. The girl's terrified gaze darted around the thick forest, and the woman's confident smile had vanished, replaced by a creeping tension that made Basford hyper-aware of their vulnerability. "What do you mean we're not alone?" he whispered, panic creeping into his voice. "In the woods, secrets have a way of revealing themselves," she said, her gaze scanning the darkness, as if expecting something to emerge. "And sometimes, it's not just the past you need to worry about." Before he could ask more, a rustling sound erupted in the underbrush, a crackle that made Basford's heart seize. The girl held onto his arm, her fingers digging in, pleading silently for reassurance. "Stay close," he commanded, directing them to move deeper into the woods, away from the sounds edging closer. They forced their way through the thick foliage, limbs scratching at their arms, the earth uneven beneath their feet as they stumbled on. The woman led them forward, a fox in the wilderness, her presence both emboldening and haunting. "Soon we'll be clear," she murmured, quickening her pace. "But we must be cautious. They weren't just hunting you." "What do you mean?" Basford asked, his breath quickening as the shadow of uncertainty loomed larger. "They want her," the woman said, pointing subtly to the girl, whose eyes widened, fear radiating from her like a flare. "Something in the blood. It runs deeper than you think." Before Basford could inquire further, a chorus of voices shattered the chill night air. Desperate yells echoed through the trees. Their pursuers had tracked them. Panic surged. They were closing in fast. "Run!" Basford shouted. The urgency surged in his veins like fire, propelling them forward with frantic speed. He could feel the shadows behind them, creeping closer, yet the forest felt alive, a living maze shifting around them. The girl's breathing came in fast, ragged gasps, her panic palpable. The maid urged her to keep moving, coaxing her forward, determination lighting her eyes as they desperately navigated the underbrush. "Faster!" the woman hissed, but even she was beginning to falter. The sounds of their pursuers were now a chorus of might, flying through the trees like specters of dread. Then, ahead, a clearing appeared, a sliver of moonlight spilling through, bright against the dark backdrop. Basford glanced back. The men were nearer now, urgency sparking like kindling, their silhouettes sharp against the shadows. "This way," he shouted, and they dashed toward the light, breaking free of the grasping wilderness into a small clearing embraced by silvery moonlight. But as they stepped into the open, time seemed still, an eerie sense of calm washing over them. "Why did we stop?" the girl whimpered, eyes darting back toward the shadows. Basford felt the heat of panic rising. "Get down," the woman urged, dropping low. Without thought, They all crouched, the three of them huddled together like fragile prey. Cover your ears, the woman whispered, and Basford struggled to comply while keeping his focus on the dark edge of the trees. A silhouette broke through the barrier, stepping into the moonlight. It was one of the men, eyes aflame with determination, anger illuminating the contours of his face. "We know you're out here. You can't hide forever," he yelled, his voice steadying. The woman's expression turned grim, the kind of calm before a storm, commanding the air around them as Basford felt the shift. "I didn't want it to come to this," she murmured, pulling a small object from her pocket, a glimmering pendant. "What is that?" Basford asked, unable to take his eyes from her grasp. "An artifact that reveals the truth," she whispered, glancing at the girl. "Your truth." The girl blinked, a flicker of comprehension as fear morphed into something else, hope. "What truth?" she asked. "Your past is more complicated than children's stories. They kill for it," the woman replied, her voice a haunting lull, recalling a confidence that felt much too fragile in this moment. Before Basford could respond, the unmistakable sounds of more men closing in filled the air like a death knell. The woman's expression hardened. "Let us end this now." She raised the pendant above her head. "Show them what they seek to hide." The artifact glowed a fierce, vibrant light that poured forth, bathing them in protection. Basford felt an electric charge race through him, quickening his heart. "What is happening?" he breathed, awestruck. The glow shimmered like liquid hope, filling the clearing with an ethereal light, illuminating the darkness behind. In its brilliance, shadows retreated, and the echoes of anger fell silent. "What is this?" the man before them stammered, awestruck. "I hold the truth," the woman declared, voice reverberating and strong. "And it's time to unravel the lies that bind you to your greed." The pendant resonated like a bell, a great sound that pulsed through the night, each wave washing over Basford, the girl, and the maid, and he suddenly understood. Their destinies were intertwined, bound by a past generation. The truth, fierce and unwavering, surged outward. It would rip through the facades of comfort and reveal every twisted connection, every hidden betrayal admittance flooding the air like a cleansing flood. As the light reached the men, the hunters, they faltered, bewildered, as the visions of their own dark choices flashed before them, scattered like fallen leaves. "Stop!" shouted their leader, rage turning to helplessness. "No." Basford held his breath, teetering on the precipice of history. The girl's fingers tangled tighter into his, the warmth grounding him as the revelations swirled around them. An explosion of memories burst free, twisting the very fabric of their circumstances, crashing down with the weight of undeniable truths. Everyone fell silent, entranced by what lay before them, the hold of fear breaking. "Your time is over," the woman said, voice steady and fierce, as the light pulsed rhythmically, turning desperate men back into shadows. And suddenly, she looked at Basford. "You have the choice to craft the future now, once and for all." They stood on the cusp of something monumental. But what would it take to heal and face the truths threatening to swallow them whole? "Together," he whispered, still holding the girl's hand, looking first at the unpredictable woman, then at the girl, who now glimmered with newfound strength through the sheer glow of enlightenment. Together, they would embrace it all. As the shadows retreated, they faced the men and one another with the gravity of choices yet untold. Basford locked eyes with the girl, their gaze transcending fear. "Let us make it count here. On this sacred ground lies the truth." You need to subscribe now if you want to follow this journey of revelation. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now. Your clicks feed the algorithm and help us bring more stories like this. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what just unfolded. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us unpack these truths together.